Hello, dear listener. I have something truly special to share. It's an exclusive invitation to join me in Mexico for an intimate and luxurious 3-day retreat along the beautiful Pacific coast of Zihuatanejo, taking place the weekend of the spring equinox, March 18th through the 20th. There's also an optional day to stay through the 21st for some special ceremonies that are happening in the area for the equinox. But the retreat itself is the 18th through the 20th, really an opportunity not to be missed. And I'm offering one lucky listener a discounted ticket on this weekend that I've just been loving into being actually for several years now as COVID and, everything. But when we conceived of building this place, our home down here, it's really what we envisioned, bringing people down here for retreats, for trainings, because we felt and we knew that this space was special. And as people keep coming down and we keep getting the feedback, how magical it is, we want to share it in a really intentional way. Be working with the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, water, the metaphors of the season. We'll set sight on a new vision for our mothering journey and creating a deeper connection to self and Mother Nature. So to win a discounted ticket, rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts. Screenshot it and DM it to me on Instagram at Dr.Gertrude Lyons. And remember, the most important thing to mother is yourself. Give yourself permission to take a retreat this year. And besides, who said mothers can't go on a spring break? I'll see you there.
This is a Soulfire production. Welcome to Mother. No, it's Mother. Welcome to Mother, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way you never have before, but have always needed. It's time we rewrite the Mother Code. Hi, and welcome to episode 39 of Mother Podcast, season 2 of Rewriting the Mother Code. I'm hoping this is as powerful for you of an episode as my journey with this topic has been, through probably the last, close to 30 years for me. And what we're going to be exploring is breaking down, looking at what it means to make the distinction between masculine and feminine values. What are they? What does it mean for me personally? How do they work together? And let's go on a little bit of a journey with it today. Now, I will disclaim that this is a very big topic and one that, as I said, it's actually been one of the most powerful and life-altering pieces of feminine leadership curriculum that I've engaged in with Dr. Judith Wright and her organization, the Wright Foundation, but particularly Sophia, Society of Femininity in Action, where it really is a huge focus in realizing the power and potential when we explore this for ourselves, to see both the impact of what it could make in our day-to-day lives for, living a life that feels more in harmony, and also the implications and huge implications that I believe has on the world and, kind of what's everything that's coming down in our planet these days. So started with a disclaimer. It's a big topic. We're going to touch on a bit of it in this podcast episode. And I actually have brought it into several of, at least a couple, maybe more where I've discussed it or brought it in. It's just so big in that way. Particular after doing the Women's Essential Experience in May. And then I'm going to share a little bit about how it came in for me in this past leadership intensive training at the end of June, as well as I just got back a couple days ago from a family vacation in southern France. and where I saw it there. So that's some of what's ahead. So why don't we go ahead and look at and start by examining the differences, the difference between, when I say masculine and feminine values, like masculine and men, feminine and women. So another, disclaimer, distinction to make there is it isn't quite so. It is gendered and it isn't gendered, I guess is the easy way to put it. Like, is there, some bias here or ways, that we'll be talking about it that may not sit, 100% with everyone. But really what we're talking about are a couple distinctions, and we're going to look at it through our brains, right and left brain, and values and qualities that they hold, and that have been shown to be explicitly, more weighted toward masculine, and hence kind of more predominant in men and how their brains operate. And then for women with the feminine, and totally understanding there's a continuum here and there's space, I believe, for everybody, in the conversation but we are probably sometimes going to look at it, a little more cut and dry, I guess, so to speak. But because both aspects do really live in all of us, feminine and masculine. And I'll stick with saying, feminine and masculine, or right brain, left brain. Those mean the same to me. The left brain being masculine, right brain being feminine aspects. And it's, what we've assigned to them. So as I said, they live in all of us. But what we've seen so explicitly in our world, and honestly for the past, this has been, the case in varying degrees for the past 5,000-6,000 years. All right. And I've, if I haven't mentioned it before, there's an author, his last name is Schlein, that wrote the book, The Alphabet versus the Goddess. Just huge research, and his theory that went into that, an exploration of like, how did it happen that when we have had points in history where it was more egalitarian, sometimes even probably overweighted toward the feminine, and honoring of the feminine, but truly some cultures and societies and ages going way, way back that have been more in harmony and, lived with no war, no borders, no explicit traits that we see so predominantly in our world as far as, what we think success is, how we feel like we have to be defended and things like that. So we know it's possible. So what happened? So what happened was, and a number of things. Agriculture, right? We became less nomadic. We settled down into one areas and started planting fields. And that, caused a shift. Suddenly there were distinctions, and the whole land wasn't all our land. It's like, no, now this piece of land is my land. So when we started looking at ownership and property, that really started shifting us. But then, what he really points to, what Schlein really points to, is the onset of written language. Prior to that, almost all stories, what had happened in the past came orally or through pictures. And we've certainly discovered that cave paintings, that we looked at and thought of possibly as very rudimentary, actually are full of wisdom and some incredibly powerful and deep meaning that we just didn't understand and didn't look at because we had gotten so focused on the written language being the way that we learn, the way that we express ourselves. But turns out that once we use the lines and the linearness of a written language in the way that we do, and we take away pictures, we take away, even like verbal explanations and sharing, our brains changed and our brains became more left brain dominant. And, left brain when we look at masculine left brain values, it is going to be more about doing versus being. We'll just name a few simple ones. Doing versus being. Knowledge versus wisdom. Thinking of a straight line, like, linear versus circular, linear being the masculine, circular being the feminine, just to give a few examples. So, masculine language is very linear. And so our brain started to change. And through that change, we started to value those aspects that come from the left brain more, more and more. Just this year, I heard a great song. It's not a brand new song or anything, but it was new to me that I thought expressed the differences really beautifully. And I'll put it in the show notes, but it's a song by Keb Mo featuring Roseanne Cash, and it's called Put a Woman in Charge. And what I think is so beautiful and powerful about this song is, sharing through song. And then also if you find the one that has the video with it, it's also really beautiful, looking at how, masculine values and living out of harmony with them, because they're very important and powerful. And believe me, I hope that you've caught on from my podcast in general that this is not about, ever about men bashing or, men being the problem. It's really about all of us overvaluing the left brain and the masculine, in our doing, in our accomplishment. And this Put a Woman in Charge does a beautiful job saying, basically enough is enough. We've built the walls, we've conquered lands, we've, built skyscrapers, all very masculine symbols. And where has it gotten us? It's gotten us some beautiful places for sure, but it continues to be such a huge cost. And we're all looking at ways that we need to and can shift this. So for me, one of the most powerful ways is to start a personal exploration and looking at, well, where do I stand in that? Where do I may say like, oh, I'm pro-woman, and women's rights and all that. But if I look at my day-to-day life, how am I living in consonance with more feminine values? How am I honoring my intuition? How am I honoring the wisdom that's innate inside of me? How am I honoring beauty and sustenance? And, when we think of some of the symbols of the feminine, the hearth, the home, those have gotten turned into like a woman her place is in the home. No, that home is us. That home is what we hold inside of us. And are we our own hearth? Are we tending to ourselves first and then, those around us in the world in a way that nourishes us and allows us to grow? In the masculine, it tends to be much more goal-oriented and external in that way, which is, why we see, all the building, all of the, the conquering that has gone on in our world for all this time. And, while I certainly will never and don't, condone it, I can see in some ways why the masculine or, the left brain has felt like it's had to subdue and imprison even, and certainly has done huge harm to the feminine because it's so powerful. We wouldn't have to do that. We wouldn't have to like put a woman in her place and degrade her the way she has been, over this, many, many years if she wasn't so powerful. If the right brain wasn't so powerful, and it's become a threat versus, what I've learned, through Sophia and Dr. Judith's curriculum is the potential and power of when we honor and live them in harmony. To me, that's what equal rights are. That's what, honoring masculine, feminine does put us all on the same playing field, because we see that when we can put them together, beautiful things, can happen. It's not then that, okay, now we want to, subdue and rein in and abolish the masculine. Not at all. But it's looking at, where are we more at home? Where do we feel like we're living to our truest self? And, for a woman, there's going to be aspects of that are living more in consonance, more in line with our feminine values. So first stepping back and looking at, okay, where am I? And, sharing some of my journey in that, I have always overvalued the masculine. Now, you may not think that when you look at me from the outside or that, because there are certain feminine values that I have and continue to, just differently, honored, beauty, whether that's, personal and, but mostly, external in my upbringing. But beauty is a very, very powerful, feminine aspect. I would say I misused that aspect. And in my overvaluing of the masculine, I used it to attract the masculine, to kind of garner the masculine energy, not by developing it myself, which I had, and when I look back, and I know I have a proclivity toward, and, some natural talents there. I was very good at math for a long period of time until I struggled a little bit with it and then decided I wasn't anymore. But I got a degree in finance and accounting, and I worked for a very prominent, economic, a PhD in economics, where we did analysis, and he, presented evidence for personal injury and wrongful death cases to award damages, proper damages. Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat. Getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if the idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons, DrGertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat. So I don't think he would have kept me on board for the 10 years that I worked with him if I didn't have, some skills, in this area. But I I didn't really see the power in them. They were kind of a means to an end. And I also had a plan that I carried through, which is, given that they weren't so innate to me, they weren't necessarily easy, and I could never, not never, but it would be very challenging to compete in that world with men. So instead, I married it. And I married the masculine through my husband, who's super intelligent, very, masculine in his physique, and just carried, so many of, what we would consider typical masculine values. So that I took that as a pass for developing my own. What I came to learn was, that was a huge disservice to me mainly, but it became a very big disservice both to our couple and then to my daughters. I think I maybe touched on this a little bit in another episode, but, I really, through my own then, reflections back and inquiries that I continue to do, saw that while I was learning and had begun to harness and honor some more of my feminine values, I really, still much more predominantly let the masculine reign more supreme, and didn't bring it in as powerfully as I feel like I could have for myself and in our family. But I'm, my whole getting my doctorate and rewriting the mother code is me working on that, because, when I look at where I don't know, kind of fell off the wagon, so to speak, in this journey of honoring and living into feminine values, I see that, and, raising my daughters, for example, I put accomplishment ahead of, how they felt and the things that they were doing, what had meaning to them, and nope, I fell right into the get the high grades, get in the best schools, figure out what your career is going to be, and not as much emphasis on how we feel about it and how is this, in line with, you as a person and what matters most to you. So, and I left myself out of that picture. But I've, stepped up my game in that arena, and a huge way that I felt like I made a shift in that was in embarking on, to begin with, and completing my doctorate. And that's really where I got to see the power of the masculine, because, the work that it takes and the structures that I had to put in place for myself. So systems, structures, accountability, goal setting, all of that was in service of, an arena, a topic around mothering and how we all mother, was going to come into being. We don't have children. We don't give birth to anything without some aspect of the masculine coming together with the feminine, right? So I don't know, maybe we'll figure that out at some point, but got a little, my mind just went a million places. That what we're talking about here is the fact that the two of those working together, is what brings forth life. And, I think something I learned on a leadership intensive once with Judith that was so powerful to me, that was another misconception I had about how even just, the whole egg and sperm thing worked, right? So in my mind, it, and historically, I always saw it as, the sperm comes in and it, whichever one wins the battle, and gets to the egg, and then kind of pounds its way in, and it's the strongest one that makes its way into the egg to procreate. Well, turns out that got a little bit skewed in our awareness and thinking about how that all happened. So yes, the sperm does come in. Many of them make it and surround the egg and that, but it's the egg that chooses, right? So the egg chooses which one to invite in, right? Not to, lose to or surrender to. It's the one that feels the most right, to her, I would say. The one that, I'm not going to begin to understand all the complexity of it, but just that concept of I'm inviting in the masculine in service of life. And that's really what my dissertation process felt like for me. It was a partnering with the masculine, inviting in what aspects of it, would support and serve, but all the while continuing to have the feminine at the forefront. Why this mattered to me, what I felt like, what I knew it was doing for my own transformation, but the potential that I felt like it could have in bringing something positive and an aspect and an awareness perspective into the world. And that I wasn't going to be able to do that if I just, thought about it nicely. It needed this vehicle, for me to even, get to know it better, for me to get in relationship with something that felt important to me, but to do a study on it, to use, and I liked that I chose in my dissertation to use both qualitative and quantitative measures to show distinctions in the curriculum I put together to raise women's awareness in what's possible for her own transformation in mothering. So, the quantitative, studied, through surveys, right? Through doing a kind of test, so to speak, but a survey before the seminar and then after, and to see what the difference is and to study that. And I had a very small sample, only I had, 13 women who went through the program. And I was told by my statistician, the person supporting me and putting the numbers together, that with a sample that small, there was no way I was going to be able to show statistically significant results. But it turned out it was so powerful, it actually did. I had such a big distinction in the difference from before and after that I was able to show statistic differences. So that, serves the masculine, right? It says, hey, look, this is something that mattered, and it catches that ear. But then also the qualitative. I had them just free flow write before the seminar, and then free flow write after. And then, for me to pull out distinctions that I saw in their language, and I saw how it felt. And that's what I wrote about is, there's the words that they said, but there was an overall feeling like prior to the seminar that I remember there was like kind of a scarcity, a fear, a tenseness. But after there were more possibilities. There was openness. There was looking at the power of our pain. So, that's one kind of larger example. And if I look at some of the things that we can think about in our day to day, because I'm, not going to continuously be writing dissertations, but, using systems and structures in my day, whenever I use a spreadsheet, I think of it as a masculine container that's allowing me to, do work and bring together the feminine with it. Setting sales goals, that's something that is very masculine in many ways. Setting financial goals, setting numbers in that way. But it gives us a game to play, a vehicle to play in, so that I can connect with, contact more and more people, and share. And it reflects both, right? But where and how we've been honoring one on top of the other. And, that very much happened, in our family where, of course, immensely, grateful and proud of what Rich built in his business. And, and we've benefited in just such beautiful ways financially from that. Whereas, my work didn't come close to that financially and in that way in the world. But, I've touched a lot of lives. I've supported a lot of people to, live more in consonance with, with their values, with vision, but it wasn't as countable. And I found myself not valuing it as much, in discussions along the way with my girls. And I think it came through in some ways, but not as powerfully and strongly as it could have. So I'm hoping I'm kind of framing, giving some possibilities and examples here. And I want to share a couple more recent ones, because my dissertation was, gosh, anyway, it was in 2017. So my immediate math skills are not showing up. It's kind of funny. I'm in a very right brain space at the moment. So a couple things that I've been part of, that I've shared about recently, was this leadership intensive at the end of June. And we dove again kind of deeply into these distinctions and, brought out, something that we've done every year, and bring that curriculum into our women's weekend and women's essential, but not quite as overtly and strongly as we have in this mixed men and women. This men and women, week-long training that we had at the end of June. And practically a whole day we spent looking at these differences in the left brain and the right brain. And as I said, I kind of, as Judith was teaching and sharing about it, I did both masculine and feminine things for myself to take it in. So I typed some notes on the computer because I wanted to remember, some specific words and things that she was saying, but I also drew pictures. Something I have felt very insecure about is, I'm not an artist, just like I'm not a singer, but I'm learning more and more to play in those arenas, because I don't have to be Picasso to, learn and love and live, through these mediums. And as she was speaking about the right and left brain, I just kind of let my hand go and I drew a picture, this very abstract picture of the brain. But when I looked at it, it brought tears to my eyes. And, if I showed it to you, you'd be like, I don't know if it would have meaning to you or move you in any way. But the fact that it moved me, allowed the material to come in a whole different way, than just the didactic and that. But together, I felt like they brought about something very powerful for me. And then I, proceeded to kind of work that way through the whole week. I have a lot more flowing and just things that are in my journal that, as I reviewed them actually right before this podcast, still brought tears to my eyes and were very powerful for me, as well as reading my notes on it too. So I just kind of want to keep making some of these distinctions. So I've been, very powerfully in that, a week and a half after completing that training, our family we just got back, as I said, on Sunday, from a week in southern France. And the one thing, I knew it would be a beautiful place. I knew it would be, kind of an adventure for us to, board a plane and go to Europe and, do something like that, given, we haven't done anything like that for all of these months. So, but I had just recently read Mary Magdalene Revealed, and I'll put that also in the show notes, any of these references. But I had never, in all my years of pilgrimage and working, I've never really kind of steeped in Mary Magdalene. And I have a lot more to go, but, the message that the author was putting forth was very powerful to me and resonated, very beautifully. So I looked up when we were going to be in southern France, where was the Mary Magdalene Basilica and supposedly her remains, because what is written is that she spent, after the death and resurrection of Jesus, however you hold that for yourself, she came to Europe to spread the good news. And, that it's just so much bigger and more powerful. And I maybe will and could do a whole episode on it itself. But I think, to summarize, Mary Magdalene and Jesus are this beautiful representation of the masculine and feminine, both of them kind of honoring both aspects within themselves, but, Mary maybe more so with the feminine and Jesus more so with the masculine, but together there was this beautiful harmony. So I really wanted to go to that basilica. So of the whole trip, that's what I most looked forward to. And our guide, on the way there said there's this beautiful abbey. Many had been destroyed, but this one was very much intact, and he thought it'd be a nice thing to see on our way to the. So we agreed, and it was beautiful, and just in and of itself was just a lovely, lovely space. But it turned out that sometimes they're using these older places and bringing in kind of art exhibitions or and kind of coupling or combining them together. And I would walk in and here's, kind of this first piece of art on the floor. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, God, it looks a lot like kind of a brain. And it was. And it was this giant kind of depiction of the brain with words in French around it. But some of them that I could make out were words that I would, could perceive or definitely were, words that were making distinctions in the masculine and feminine. And then we went up to the front of the church or the altar, and there was this big, beautiful crystal. I mean, I don't know if it was crystal, glass, whatever, brain sitting on top of a mirror, also with words etched around the sides, like, emotions and I can't remember all the words, but it was also showing masculine, feminine words. And then we went outside, and in this courtyard was a labyrinth-looking type piece that covered this whole big piece of the earth and ground that was also a brain. I'm like, this, I just love things like that because, when I let go, when I'm not holding too tightly to the masculine and the linear, I can open myself and accept these aspects as just the huge gifts that they are. And I feel like, spirit talking to me oftentimes. And I just let myself delight in it. And I'm hoping, I think I should be able to have a picture that I'll share, when I put this episode up, of me with that brain, we didn't spend a lot of time there. I probably could have spent all day just sitting and being with and journaling, but I just, let it kind of absorb into me and see it as just a beautiful sign and experience that I got to have. And then, the Mary Magdalene Church was just so beautiful and phenomenal. And I think underlined and brought forth for me, doing things like that, bringing my family to spaces like that is me being a feminine leader in my family. Me putting, this as high up on the list and as important as, some of the other sightseeing, certainly shopping and the eating and other beautiful things that you could take advantage of in southern France. But this wasn't any less important. And I don't know, sometimes in my mind, probably more all sources of nourishment, right? All sources of delight and aspects, that all of it entails. So I wanted to kind of, see how this weaving and when I'm more in touch with and have in the forefront my journey. And I love, because this was another thing we talked about on the Leadership Week, my heroine's journey is very much about honoring and living more true to my feminine values, to my right brain. And, doing a podcast is another good example of that, right? I'm using these mechanisms, this vehicle to share, but also so much to like learn and grow myself. Like it, does me a huge service to be able to speak about these things out loud, but I wouldn't be able to have other people, have any of you listen to it were it not for, the intellect and the intelligence that it takes to, and the mechanisms to put it together to make this happen. So I would love it if this, episode has spurred you in your thinking and allowed you to kind of do some assessing of yourself around where you do and don't hold feminine values, where you overvalue the masculine and where and how is there some cost to that. And that it's, a moment to moment, day by day process that, certainly can be heightened through coaching and other ways to like really keep it in the forefront. But I always like kind of leaving us with some homework, kind of what is a way I can live, and I can look at this a couple ways. Like it could be everything from just spending, this next week or so looking at, how can I build and continue to use my masculine in service of the feminine. I'm going to call it mothering my masculine. For me, that's going to look like, after this, going and putting together my to-do. I always like to call it my to-do/be list. So I have doing and being there. But that structure supports me in, being productive and getting that much more done. So I'm going to do that as a discipline and really hold that every day. I update it and do that this week. And so I'd love for you to consider notice something that you do that is, maybe more in the masculine, and how is it serving you in more of the feminine. But any way that you can think about it and raise your awareness, or notice it in other people, notice it in the world around you, where are we out of balance, and, where are we not honoring? So look at it both for yourself personally. Where am I not honoring and living in harmony with the masculine and feminine? How am I seeing that in the world? And what's something that you can do this week to, mother your masculine in service of the feminine? All right. So we'll check back in on some of those things and see how you're doing. But I've loved being on this journey with you today, and I wish you well. Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to subscribe to Mother. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women, well, actually everybody, men included. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons, or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com. I'll see you next time.